Noah's Ark 2x2 formation. Road change now, we go racing for the first time this season. 3 hours of GT action, it's go.
It's very tight as they come down. Group of cars coming in. This has all got trouble written all over it. This is G3 cars.
Drop downhill there, head towards the Aqua Minerale. Imola, of course. There's another one off through the gravel. As wide as possible as they drop downhill, putting that truck inside line. Yes, he did. Through he goes.
Good evening everybody and welcome back to another Apex Online Racing stream here for round 4 of the GT3 series on Assetto Corsa Competizione tonight for the Tier 2 drivers. Once again heading around the very tricky and challenging circuit of Zandvoort and see how our drivers this evening get on with this challenge as we see our championship leader taking to the dirt almost immediately. Perhaps a planned retirement to the pit lane there. But yes, that man, Christos Jorgurk in the SpongeBob livery. Beautiful livery on that car. The Audi driver doing an absolutely phenomenal job last week to be king of the mountain at Bathurst. Absolutely dominant drive from Christos and really did drive off into a class of his own. Had to judge the strategy to perfection, and that's exactly what he went and did. And although there were a couple of small things that did crop up for him during that race, he stayed composed and he had a very mature drive to see him jump up to the top of the standings and get a 20-point lead. In the meantime, the man that sits P2 in the standings, Daniel Pashka in the 77 car, who I think hilariously is actually directly overlapping with Jorgurk's car, so we can't actually quite see those two from one another. But yeah, Pashka got caught up in that big pile-up on lap 1. So did one of our other main championship protagonists, Christian Steinhauser. Doesn't look like he's in the server just yet. Hopefully he'll be able to pop in at some point before we get going for qualifying. But it was a big disaster for some of our championship contenders, so they'll be hoping for a much nicer day in the office this evening. But right now, who have we got out on track at the moment? We've got Remy Papin, so that is Jorgurk's teammate in that Patrick themed car. So nice dueling pair of liveries there. It's not too often we actually get liveries that are distinct from one another. In recent history, so one that comes to mind, I believe the BAR did something during the early 2000s when a certain combination of their sponsors, and I think they had reverse sides for each of the cars. So we don't see it all too often, but nice to see the two Audis sporting these wonderfully themed SpongeBob livery cars. But yes, Zandvoort this evening, and we saw yesterday in Tier 1 just how chaotic it can be around this circuit. It's such a roller coaster and it's so unforgiving, and the overtaking opportunities are very few and far between. Remy really pushing the outskirts of the exit turn 12 there. We saw that even that sort of mistake led to an incident between Darking and Krzysztof Makowski into turn 13 there. So it really does, the nature of this circuit forces drivers to absolutely try to extract the maximum of every single inch of the circuit that they can, and in turn, unfortunately, that does then end up giving us some occasional incidents on track with some big crashes. And although it does certainly add to the drama and the excitement of the race, ideally we do like to see the battles take place fair and square and everyone making it to the checkered flag at the end. So hopefully Tier 2 will put on a good show for that tonight. I've possibly commentator cursed that now horribly, but we shall see how things get on. And one thing I do really want to know, at the moment, Yalenko, who has shown some brilliant pace at times, was our pole sitter, if I'm not mistaken, last time out at Bathurst, and then just had an absolutely terrible afternoon with judging the pit strategy, and in the end had a DNF, which I don't think we entirely caught on stream for how that took place. But he's currently P20 in the standings, but we know how fast he is, and it's incredibly impressive that right now he's a quarter of a second clear of Mash, our lead Porsche, and we know that the Porsche has very good one-lap pace. We saw Whitehead, Trevor Wenham and Black Goldsaw all have incredible one-lap pace in the car. Esser as well yesterday in Tier 1, but in the long run it did really struggle. And again, I imagine that the theme of the high temperatures, the high degradation for the Porsches in this split are very much going to reflect what we saw yesterday, and it might just be the sort of thing that the likes of the Hondas, the Audis even, may end up needing to be that bit more competitive. But we are now switching over to qualifying, so we'll head on into there. As everyone now rushing out onto the circuit, almost a little bit of contact through turn 1 immediately, but thankfully nothing just yet. Also, another name to keep an eye on is our race 1 winner. Gasper Marak is back in the server. He had to he was away for a couple of rounds, so I don't believe he's participated. No, so he hasn't been able to show up ever since Misano, and he had an incredibly mature drive there to take that victory. So clearly it looks like for certain drivers that the Honda has got some pace around here this evening potentially, so it'd be interesting to see what that man can do and see if he can get another win to his name, see if he can get 100% success rate for winning races of those that he attends and finishes. So it'd be interesting to see how the number 88 car gets on this evening. Who have we got leading us away at the front at the moment? I think we've got Thomas Jack in the McLaren that is currently our lead car. So it looks like number 13 will be starting us off for qualifying, as we will go on board with Thomas to take us around a lap here at Zandvoort. Bit of a wider windshield on this car, so a little bit of an easier one to see through and get a bit of an idea of how the apexes line up around here. But now onto the start-finish straight, then carrying all the momentum you possibly can in those final couple of corners, and then crossing the line halfway down that start-finish straight, and then trying to spot your braking point is around here just after that little pit exit line, and then get yourself tucked into the camber of turn 1, short shifting up towards second gear, so reducing the wheel spin on the exit, then that little kink before going into turn 3, and then down into this very long and deep 180 bend. Really got to be patient on the throttle there, and got to be so careful with the proximity to the curves. Curves really unforgiving around the circuit, and the cars like McLaren's might end up catching themselves out around here. Really high commitment corner now, down into the descent of 6, trying to get the car tucked in, maybe a little bit wider than we wanted to, and a lot of power as early as you possibly dare before through back Swift King before 7, and then running it through, drifting on the exit, and then hard on the brakes, and a variety of lines you can take through here. You sometimes see drivers setting up a bit of a late move into turn 8, and then another very wide corner, almost the exact opposite of 8 through into 9. Use a little bit of that exit curb through there, trying to extract all of the momentum from the car you possibly can, and then hard on the brakes on the beginning of that curb on the left. Clip that right-hand apex, don't take too much. Even in the Bentley, you can't get away with cutting the corner that much. Really fiddly series of curbs there again, and then 2 very important and tricky corners. Try and get your car tucked in. It can get a little bit unsteady if you take too much curb, but just take a little bit to try to pull yourself into the corner. If you've got the car set up right, you can be flat through the final one and then carry all of that speed towards the start-finish line, and it will be Thomas Jack to go and do a 35.6. I'm sure that will be beaten very quickly, and it is by Jogurk and more drivers coming through. So let's see in our first batch of runs, who is it that is currently going to be leading the way, and Yuroshilenko manages to pit the 71 of Andre McClear in the 71 BMW. Good effort there from Andre. BMWs yesterday in Tier 1 clearly were not the strongest, so it'd be interesting to see how he can get on. We've got Frank Spike, only 0.005 of a second down, but now Remy Papin has something to say about it. And in the Audi of all cars, 0.02 of a second clear of Euros in that number 6 Audi, so Remy really getting on with it in the early stages of the session. See, anyone else got anything to say about it? Gasper Mrak puts in his best effort so far to go into P5, and qualifying really important around here. Koroshavin, driver that finished second last time out at Bathurst with a very competitive drive through there. Didn't have the best qualifying session, but just in all the chaos made all the right decisions, kept his head down, and came away with a very, very strong result and showed some very promising pace there as well. So good start there from him in his qualifying session. I think we might have a few more cars rounding the field. Number 37 just hits the line. Who was that in the 37 car? Oh, that was Matthias Weber. So Weber goes up to the top of the timesheets and does a 35.1. So a very good lap there from him, as Jogurk 0.005 of a second slower, and getting very, very tight. Robin Moe in the McLaren goes up to P4. Daniel Pashka goes up into P4 now as Mash displaces the previous championship leader as well and goes in between our first and second place drivers in the standings. So a good effort so far from Mash in that really multicoloured livery. Definitely a mashup for that one. We've got every texture possible on there, and then Remy goes a little bit quicker than Weber as well, so goes into a 35.0. Will we see any 34s before the end of the session? We shall have to wait and see. Also seeing in the chat somebody mentioning a driver called Akai. Unfortunately, I don't think we have an Akai in the server tonight, I'm afraid, so it doesn't look like they've been able to join us this evening. And amongst all of that, Yuroshilenko all the way has dropped to P13. So that initial pace that he's shown, well, I'd say that actually he's on a 0.4 of a second improvement at the moment. So that'll see him shoot up towards the pointy end of the grid. So we'll see what the number 17 car can do. There's a yellow flag. That was for Jogurk. The 147 has brought out a yellow flag as well. Who is that for? That's for Jordan Watson in the Ferrari, who's just gone to the pits. Yuroshilenko, though, still 0.4 of a second up, using all of our Honda power. Oh, that was absolutely pushing the limits there on the exit of turn 12. Really could not push any further than that without dipping a wheel into the gravel, but as he comes towards the line, it'll be good enough for P3. Just 0.03 of a second. Look at the margins here in Tier 2, as Weber also managed to do an improvement amongst all of that and find a little bit of extra time to just go ahead of Papin. So very, very close between these two at the moment. And really, our top 5 drivers all within a 10th, and someone who deserves a shout out and a half, Benji McCluskey in the Bentley. We know that this car goes very well around this circuit, but you know, Benji, he hasn't had the strongest of seasons so far, particularly in qualifying. He's had some good race pace performances, both at Barcelona and Bathurst, but just particularly at Bathurst, kind of picking his way through the field and capitalising on other errors. But this evening, really seemingly strong pace from the Bentley driver, so a very good effort there from him. And we saw how quick the Bentleys were at race pace yesterday, so could most definitely be one to watch during the race, even if it's not the strongest in qualifying. As he pulls over to the side now, we've also got Frank Spike on an improvement, 3/10 up at the moment. That would be a time very much looking to challenge towards the top 5. Cars getting blue flagged out of the way. I think it was Daniel Pashka. He just made his way past. It was. So what can the number 92 car do as he comes through his final tricky sequence of corners? More cars pulling over out the way. Get out Porsche nicely tucked in to the apex of 12 on the power as early as he dares. Carry that momentum through, just clip the apex, not too strongly. I think he's found a little bit of extra time. It's going to be close for the top 5. I'm not sure exactly where it's going to put him. It's definitely going to be improvement. Oh, and he found just enough in the final part of the lap to go 0.008 of a second quicker than anybody else. Well, I thought it might be good enough for top 5. The delta was obviously being a little bit incorrect there in the end, and he got a brilliant final sector there. He was 3/10 clear of Weber's previous sector. That was a fantastic way to end the lap there for the number 92 car, and that puts him up on provisional pole. Brilliant stuff there. Jogok was on an improvement, just goes a little bit wide through turn 7, that is, and then runs slightly wide on the curb, just clips the exit onto the grass, and then ends up all over the dirt and has to abandon that lap. But still, just under 6 minutes to go in this qualifying session. Still plenty of time to try to put together a better effort. But my goodness, we have some tight margins in this field tonight. Even tighter margins than what we've had in Tier 1. So brilliant stuff here from our Tier 2 drivers this evening. This is fantastic so far from them. Yuroshilenko has improved in the meantime to get his Honda up into P4. It's a good effort there from him. Meanwhile, the man that won the opening round, Gaspenrak, all the way down in P15, so not quite managing to get too comfortable with that Honda at the moment. Looks like he might be setting up another go though now, so we'll have to see if he's able to find any additional time and get himself back up towards the top 10. Who else have we got improving at the moment? We've got some improvements for the likes of Matt York in the BMW. Matt usually not the best in terms of qualifying, but absolutely phenomenal in terms of racecraft and race pace. Had a brilliant drive through the field at Bathurst, all the way from, I think, 31st on the grid, and managed to get himself up to P7 in the end with a dramatic and very, very brave series of final lap overtakes. That was extraordinary stuff from him to achieve that, so it will help him out a lot this evening if he can get a little bit further up the order, but still down in P22 for the time being. In the meantime, we've got Isfan Puki in the 333 Porsche, who is up on improvement by a couple of tenths of a second, and again, that could see him very much get towards the top 10. Also have to keep an eye on Jogok as well, the number 69 car on the circuit. Whereabouts is Jogok? Trying to spot him on the map. Looking for a needle in the haystack. In the meantime, a 333 car will improve up to P11. So a good improvement there for him. And Jogok, whereabouts is our championship leader? Come through the final corner now. He's found a 10th. He would have wanted a little bit more. It'd be good enough for top 5, I think, though. And oh, he actually squeezes out just a little bit extra at the end and does the first 34 of the session, and as well a very impressive lap from Jordan Watson in that Ferrari. Not a car known to be brilliantly quick around here, and Jordan is due a good result and some good luck. He has had some brilliant pace at times, but for various reasons hasn't been able to bring it home for a good, strong points finish at the end. Bathurst, he was very, very unlucky with a car that was a back marker and got completely blindsided in the skyline area of the circuit. So good stuff from there from him. In the meantime, though, Yuroshilenko has responded. He's responded big time. 34.802 there from the number 17 car. So the Honda shoots back up to the top of the timesheets, and not by a small margin either. That was a very, very strong lap there from the Honda. See if we've got anyone else improving at the moment. We've got Gasper Marak that's found a 10th. Pitchik as well, currently in P10, has found some time as well. Remy is finding a bit of lap time. Oh, that's I think it's Matthias Weber that's pulled over to the side of the circuit. So potentially we'll get one more run. There's a few guys retiring to the pits at the moment to try to get in their final attempts before the qualifying session ends. I think Gasper will be able to finish this lap and should get in. Potentially two more, actually, if he has the fuel for it. He's got Mash just up ahead of him. Oh, Gasper's lost a little bit of time at the tail end of Sector 2 there. I'm not sure it's going to be an improvement. I'll tell you, somebody who's improving big time, though. Yuroshilenko has found 0.2 of a second in this lap, and this could be an absolutely mighty lap from the number 17 Honda. He's going to be running it towards the line. It looked like a very nice clean exit there through turn 12. He's maintaining the delta. This could be a very strong lap from Yuroshilenko as he heads towards the line. He's going to get a good slipstream off the McLaren ahead, and as he crosses the line, it's a 34.560. A brilliant effort there from the Honda, and that will be his last lap of the session, and it may even be good enough for pole, because now all of a sudden the thousandths, the hundredths of a second that we had separating these guys before has just jumped up to half a second. And Jogurk now, if he wants to match his championship position in qualifying and go up into pole, he's got to find a big chunk of time. That is incredibly impressive from Yuroshilenko. In the meantime, we've also got Daniel Pashka, who is 0.2 of a second up, coming into the final corner now. We'll get another run at this if he chooses to go for it, but this will get him towards the top 10, I think. And it will be good enough for P6. So, number 77 Audi does jump up the order. About Alessio Mellis. Oh, has backed out of that one. Was a 10th up on his time, but the Ferrari driver pulling over to the side of the road. So, we'll have to see who else we've got improving. I think we've got Pookie that is a little bit back and forth on the delta. Very, very close margins, but certainly in that midfield, close margins is all you need to be able to shoot yourself up the order quite considerably. Can the 333 squeeze anything out in the final sector? Running towards the line, will get a little bit of a toe off the McLaren ahead. As he heads towards the line, it will be an improvement, but he does exactly the same time as Alessio Mellis, just ahead on the 35.180. And right now, will look starts in P14 with potential chance to improve. That is the end of the clock, though, for the qualifying session, so it won't be many more opportunities for these guys to improve. Jogurk hasn't found time in his attempt on this lap. He's still trying to see it through to the very end, but I'm not sure if our championship leader is going to be able to challenge for pole unless he has a very, very strong end to the lap. More cars retiring to the pits. Got Jan Climbs, who did find a 10th in the middle sector. I'm not sure if he's managed to maintain enough on his delta towards the end, and he has. He's found half a 10th, and that'll be good enough to see him go to P7. We've also got Jay Fang that has found 2/10 up in the middle sector, so we'll have to see how he gets on. Matthias Weber has found a 10th in going into the final sector. They've lost it a little bit, though. Going into the final couple of corners, can the Audi driver do anything about Yuroshilenko's lap? I don't think it's going to be possible. Might be able to shift himself up towards P3 if he can squeeze out a bit of extra time. Oh, it's good enough for P2. The extra thousandths that he needed. And Jogurk's bailed out of his laps. There won't be any more improvement from him. Where is Jay Fang? Jay Fang was on an improvement. He's still on his lap. He's lost a little bit of time somewhere. So the middle sector hasn't been quite so strong for the number 14 car. But coming into the final couple of corners now, you see drivers, see likes of Yuroshilenko was a lot more confident carrying speed through there and able to really then use all the straight line speed and grunt to the Honda to see him get towards what will be pole position. But Jay Fang unable to improve at the end, misses out on improving by only 5 thousandths. But my goodness, Yuroshilenko, what an absolute gauntlet to lay down in this qualifying session. All the other drivers in the top 10 separated by just over a 10th, and then this man absolutely smashes them out of the ballpark and goes up into pole position by over 0.4 of a second. That was a mighty lap, purple in all 3 sectors as well, and a very, very strong way to open this session for the Honda driver. Brilliant stuff there from him. So in the end, after that very crazy qualifying session, we have this man starting on pole position in a brilliant effort there for the Honda. Be interested to see how that car deals with the high temperatures and the tyre degradation in this race. It does look like, once again, we're going to have clear weather through this race. But how will the Honda deal with it? Similarly, we haven't seen Audis dealing in these conditions at the pointy end of the grid from yesterday's race. So it'll be very interesting to see how the likes of Matthias Weber and Christos Jogak, our championship leader, deal with that in second and third place on the grid. Jordan Watson, strong effort there in the Ferrari to get the 147 car into the top 4. Frank Spike, the first of our Porsches. Might be a tough day for Frank and the rest of our Porsches in this field. We know how much they struggled yesterday to maintain their race pace during the end portions of the stint. Did manage to really get the tyres kicked into life and early on the pace, so maybe able to make up some positions early on if he can get the car placed correctly, but later on in the stint, maybe a little bit of a troublesome day. Daniel Pashka down in P6. He'll be looking to try to make up for a very disappointing outing last time out for Bathurst. See if he can recover any more points and close in on Jogak. Starts ahead of him. Jan Climbs starting in P7 with Remy Papin starting in P8. And then Mash, good qualifying session from him. And then Benji McCluskey to round out the top 10 and be the first of our Bentleys. We don't have too many Bentleys on this field, but watch out for that car because Benji may be able to do something special with the pace that seems to be underlying the Bentleys around here in these tricky, very hot conditions. We then got Trafka, the next of our Hondas, so that just really goes to show how much of a big effort that was from Yurashilenko to get that car into provisional pole. Then we've got Ola Pitchik in P12 in the 141, followed up by Alessio Mellis in our next Ferrari, possibly our only other Ferrari. Then we have Istvan Pukki in the 333 Porsche, I think maybe making his debut in the series so far. I don't remember the name. Having a look. No, I don't have any previous results by the looks of it for him, so this will be his first race of the season. So be interesting to see how he deals with the tricky scenario of being in the mid-pack, especially around somewhere like Zandvoort, where the cars can very much get bottlenecked. We've then got Jay Fang in the number 14 McLaren, the first of our McLarens, and then Gasper Marak down in P16. Really was not able to find the sort of pace that I thought we might see from him on his comeback to the series. So, unable to live up to that, but maybe able to push his way further through the field. We've got Robin Moe in P17, followed by Andre McClure in the 71 BMW. And we've got Dominic Koroshavin down in P19, the man that finished last race in P2, all the way down the tail end of the top 20. And then rounding out the top 20 will be Thomas Jack in the number 13 McLaren. We then got one of our few Astons, Mr. Jones, followed up by one of our only other Astons on the grid, Wojtek Neuwirth in the 63 car, followed by Benjamin King in the 99 Audi, and then Yuko Terminen, our lone Lexus, in the field. Jean-Michel Brin in the Lamborghini, starting in 25th position. Hans Peter in 26th, with Matt York down in 27th. So again, a disappointing qualifying session. He's 7th in the standings overall. He's finished 11th, 9th and 7th, but qualifying just does not seem to be his strong suit. And the BMW, in fairness to the likes of Matt, Maderi, Rosetta and Cowley, there's a group of BMWs there all at the tail end of the field, is definitely a car that is struggling for pace. Also a good effort there from the likes of Andre McClure in the 71 car to do so well to get his car up into that P18 position. We've then got Andrew Verona in 31st, and then Ilya Dutnitson all the way down in 32nd to round out the field. So that is how we look to start tonight. Just having a quick look at the chat. So Remy Rose is Akai. Yes, so it doesn't look like we've got Remy starting on the grid this evening, but has joined us in the chat to say hello. So good to see you there, Remy. And also that we have some additional information of Benji McCluskey in that Bentley, a multiple-time AOR champion. So I'm not sure across what divisions or tiers or leagues that is from. Could also be across from another platform, of course, but Benji, clearly an experienced racer within Apex Online Racing and within sim racing generally, so that maturity and experience that you tend to build up when you've been part of so many different leagues will certainly look to hopefully help him in trying to negotiate what can be a very, very tricky opening few laps around here at Zandvoort. We saw the Tier 1 drivers, our elite squad of drivers from this series of championships we have for GT3 on ACC. And even they ended up making mistakes, having silly errors, and when pushing each other for those few thousandths of a second, every single point that they could get from one another, it did unravel. When it did unravel, it unraveled spectacularly. This circuit, once again, is incredibly unforgiving. So it'll be interesting to see how the Tier 2 guys get on this evening. Yuroshilenko now, as they start to get formed up on the grid, get into formation. There'll be the mad rush from everybody. We've also got the 402 car of Verona that is a bit far back of everybody else. We've got Dunnison, I think, has waited for the Lamborghini. You can see they're very far away from the tail end of that pack, so hopefully they'll catch up in time. I'm not quite sure how it was that they dropped back that far, but for round 4 then of Tier 2, it will be Yuroshilenko to start on pole position as they look to head away. Can the Honda driver maintain that hard-earned pole into turn 1? And oh, Mateus Weber's got a huge jump. It's a terrible start there for our pole sitter. And Yogok is going to try to go around the outside as well. Got Pashka trying to go around the outside of Watson as well. And contact into turn 1. Weber's round. Yogok, our championship leader. Pashka all bottlenecked and all that. And Watson capitalizes on it all. And he goes into the lead, and a big lead at that. What's going on further down the grid? Frank spikes up in a P2. Yuroshilenko holds down into P3. We've got Jan Climbs just behind him. Mash up into P5. And then it looks like we've got Koroshavin that's made up a huge amount of paces in the opening part of the laps. Actually, it might be Pitchik. That is Pitchik that's managed to get those positions. And then we've got Yogurk and Pashka further down the order that have swapped around. So Pashka's managed to get ahead of Yogurk. But I imagine that there'll be a steward's inquiry in that because Yuroshilenko did seem to completely outbrake himself. And where did Weber end up amongst all of that? Weber all the way down at the tail end of the field. So the man that started on the front row. A terrible start there from him. Cowley going side by side with another one of the BMWs just ahead. I think that's Madiri. As all Benji McCluskey has fallen all the way down the order as well. So he got caught up all amongst that. So several cars experiencing issues in this opening lap there as it all got very, very tight up at the front. Jordan Watson, though, he saw it all unfold in front of him, and is this the luck that he's finally needed and deserved to potentially go into a commanding position? Who's that? We've got Pitchik that's gone off there in the middle part of the circuit now, trying to cover off. I think that's Thomas Jack just behind him. So something went on there in that final part of the lap. What happened to Pitchik? We'll have a look there so you can see he's just behind Mash at the moment. It's all looking fairly reasonable. And what happens? Oh, completely outbraked himself. Going in. Oh, and then gets tagged from behind. So, and just about manages to stop the car from spinning around entirely. So, very, very weird series of events. So, he outbraked himself behind Mash. And then, I think that was that the 333? I think that was the 333 of Pookie behind. Then got completely caught off guard himself and then ended up tagging the back of the Audi and almost sending him completely around. Good car control to hold on to it then, but Watson has absolutely bolted from the rest of the grid and is not taking a second invitation. He will be absolutely loving life at the front of the field at the moment. Pashka also, I think, may have suffered a little bit of damage in the opening portion of those laps, but crucially for him, is ahead of the championship leaders. He goes for a dive on Trafka. That was a very, very late send on the number 7 car, but he makes it stick. And the Trafka, though, still fighting back on the inside. A little bit of rubbing. Trafka trying to hold on to the slide there on the inside, and now Jorgen's trying to get involved in this as well. We've got our 2 championship protagonists going side by side, and Daniel Paschke's just got a nose going into the Audi S's. Can he outbrake the Honda into the next corner? I think he can. And Jorgen now getting caught up on the inside curve, but he can't follow the Audi through, so he will have to continue to settle for P9, excuse me. But Daniel Paschke trying to make up for lost time and trying to capitalise on how his championship rivals race is panning out so far and get some crucial additional points, and will look to set off charging after the likes of Pookie ahead. As there's a big push now from Jorgen, trying to go around the outside of Trafka going towards turn 1. That'll be a credible move if he can make it stick really late on the brakes. He's still got a nose in there. Trafka's not going to leave him too much room as the 2 going still side by side in towards turn 2. But Trafka's going to hold that inside line and is not going to let the championship leader pass just yet. Let's go on board with Jorgen. See what it was like in the cockpit. You see McClare almost making a bit of a bump in the rear of Jorgen there, but thankfully not doing anything of the sorts in the end. You can see that Honda has a lot of torque up this portion of the hill, as now this train looks to follow through this tricky sequence of corners. Almost impossible to make an overtake through here unless you are firmly alongside, and you really do have to. Always McClare gets a little bit over the exit there. Almost loses the back of the car. Jay Fang now coming under pressure from Pitchik, trying to recover as we've got Thomas Jack trying to send it down towards the inside. And he had Koroshavin, who's made a brilliant start to get up into P14 so quickly. And his teammates not too far ahead either. So Pitchik now looking towards the inside of Fang, and Fang's left the door wide open big time. That will compromise his exit through the next series of corners. We know how fast the Audis are on these straights. Can he look to make a move back? Then we've got Neuwirth in the background as well, going side by side. Has had to concede, though, back into the train. Where is Weber amongst all this? So Weber, I think, has made his pit stop, but he has. Dunnison and Weber making their pit stops very early on. That's going to be very, very interesting to see how their races pan out with the tyre degradation. Yuroshilenko coming under a bit of pressure from Jan Klimes behind, but still maintaining that position. But that could all change post-race with some potential penalties for that contact at the beginning. We've got side-by-side action between a couple of cars in the background there. I think we had Benjamin King and Robin Moe getting a little bit racy there through turn 2. Yuka Terminen, oh, that was so close on the front bumper of the Lexus there. Almost spinning around that Vodafone McLaren, but just about managing to keep it all clean. And there he is, just behind Matt York, capitalising on each of these mistakes and moments. He's already gained 6 or 7 positions, I think, so far in this race. In the opening couple laps are continuing to live up to what we know he is capable of in these race distances. Mr. Jones was looking a little bit around the outside of Mellis. Head, you can see Mellis having to take some slightly different lines around there to try to fend off the Aston and cover those positions off in the meantime. Yuroshilenko still under pressure from Jan Klimes behind, but unable to do anything about it just yet. Is the 329 car. Porsches, we know, struggle in these sorts of conditions and struggle in straight line speed, and the Honda is really not a car that you want to be trying to go into a 1v1 with in terms of straight line speed. It will almost out-drag anything. Paschke hasn't been able to really close up too much onto the likes of Pookie, but we'll have to see how degradation plays into this, because we know that the Porsches do suffer quite badly. We're not so sure about the Audi, so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out for them, but maybe in the next 10 minutes or so we could see some improvements in pace relative for the likes of the 77 car. We'll be suffering with a little bit of damage, though, amongst all that contact at the beginning of the race. Once again, no fault of his own. Same goes for Weber and Jorgen. In the meantime, Frank Spike is losing a bit of ground to the front, so that's one of the Porsches already maybe coming under a little bit of pressure due to these conditions. We saw certain drivers being able to manage it a little bit better. We saw the likes of Esser that dropped heavily down the order, whereas Black Gold saw Trevor Wenham was able to maintain pace in the Porsche for just a little bit longer, but wasn't able to quite see it through all the way to the end in terms of race pace. So we'll have to see how he gets on. Also, interesting question in the chat about the skill gap between Tier 1 and Tier 2. I would say that it depends on the circuit and the conditions. Generally speaking, that when you look at the pole position times, there can be anywhere between 0.3 to 0.7 of a second difference, depending on how long the lap is. If you're going somewhere like Spa, you might see a bigger margin between the likes of Tier 1 and Tier 2, but you know, it's all about those fine margins during the lap, and then that does kind of perpetuate to some extent during the race as well. But in terms of racecraft, the Tier 2 guys and Tier 1 guys probably not separated by too much. We see some brilliant racing in both tiers, and we also see some questionable moments in both tiers. So I would say in that sense that they are fairly even, but it is mostly in terms of just outright pace, and it can vary, I would say, anywhere between 3 to 0.7 of a second, depending on the conditions and the laps, or the length of laps, excuse me. In the meantime, we'll check back down the order just a bit. Ola Pitchik has fallen away from Jay Fang a bit and is coming under increasing pressure from Thomas Jack behind. Oh, as he gets a little bit of a wiggle on the exit of turn 8 there, Thomas Jack looking to try to set up a move around the outside. Can he get the drive off the exit of 9? We know that the Audi has good straight line speeds. It's going to be a difficult one to overtake. And to see, even in the slipstream, this close behind the 141 car just up ahead, the Audi still has enough grunt to pull ahead. So very, very tricky for the likes of the McLaren to make an overtake potentially on the Audi just up ahead. If anything, he may come under pressure now from Ola Pitchik's teammate Dominic Koroshavin, who is now firmly locked into the slipstream. You see, gaining all the time. The Audi has so much speed, goes very, very late towards the outside. Thomas Jack could try holding the inside, he could try sweeping around the outside if he can, make a comeback towards the inside, but unable to do so, and will have to continue to settle for P14 for the time being. We will check back ahead though. We've got Frank Spike, who is coming under increasing pressure now from Joris Jelenko and Jan Klimes. Frank Spike on that last lap. What's that? Oh, is that so? It's contact? No! Again! Joris Jelenko! He thought he saw a gap and he thought he saw an opportunity and he sent Frank Spike into the gravel. And now Jan Klimes having to take evasive action on the Honda. And now Mash trying to capitalise on all of this and trying to go for a podium position. But my goodness, disaster strikes once more. So we'll have to see. Let's go on board with Joris Jelenko as they went down towards turn 6. You can see how much speed the Honda has in this section. It's got so much torque up the hill, and they get down to the braking zone. He goes to the inside. He didn't really have much of an overlap there at all. He does well to hold on to the slide, but that's another car that Joris has unfortunately hit off the circuit. And well, you do have to wonder how many more bits of contact will it need to be until he starts to perhaps have a slightly more cautious approach. But that is two very, very aggressive moves now, which I am fairly confident will result in some sort of form of penalty. You would have to imagine. We don't have live stewards in Tier 2, but there will be some post-race inquiries without a doubt. Yeah, you actually have to be side by side before that corner. Mash, though, coming under pressure now, all from the 333 car. Little bit of bumping there. I think Mash just went a little bit deeper on the brakes than Pookie was expecting, and then just in the overlap, just had a little bit of contact. And in the meantime, Frank Spike has come undone once again. I think it was on the outside of turn 1, and has had to drop back by a long way there, and has ended up in between the Team Ballas Esports cars. We'll have to look, see if we can see what happened to Frank Spike. So his day goes from bad to worse. He was battling with Yogok, so was our championship leader involved in this. Oh, as he gets a big slide through the middle of the corner, then gets all sorts of upset, then gets contact with the BMW and just gets shoved off into the gravel. I think that was a bit of a racing incident, to be fair. That was a very unfortunate series of events. He got it wrong in the middle of the corner, maybe really struggling with the rear tyres on that Porsche already, and then just with the way it played out, just, oh, and he's dropping back even more positions. That is the Ferrari of Mellis, I believe, that's got past him. Mr. Jones trying to go all the way around the outside. Mr. Jones now onto the gravel. And we'll have to concede to that one. So Frank Spike still defending very, very heavily with this car. But his day is definitely going from bad to worse. And I think also, furthermore, Thomas Jack, who was battling much further up the order than P18. Can't remember exactly who it was that he was fighting with. I think it was with the likes of Pitchick. And so something has happened to the number 13 McLaren. So that's a disaster for him. We'll check back up, though, with our front group of cars as they started to break up just a bit. This has allowed Daniel Pashka, with all this battling going on, to close in on these guys just a tad. On that last lap, Pashka took 0.4 of a second out of the likes of Mash, and an even bigger margin over Pookie just ahead. So maybe that Audi now starting to find a bit of pace. We've also got the likes of Jorgen that's managed to recover fairly well up to P8 as well. I have to see how it all plays out in the pit stops, because we know that Weber will have had some very strong pace at this stage of the race, but you'd have to imagine that in these conditions his tyres will be absolutely destroyed by the time most of these guys have just pitted onto fresh tyres, let alone at the end of the race. So we'll have to see how that pans out for him. In the meantime, Yuroshilenko is travelling very, very quickly at the moment and closing that gap down towards the 147 car of Jordan Watson. But one would have to imagine for those two incidents that there'll be some penalties that, a bit like yesterday, will end up seeing our race winner on track perhaps not actually being our race winner in the end overall. But we'll have to see how that all plays out. So I imagine we'll have some pretty unofficial results today at the end of all of this action. In the meantime, seeing some flashing of the lights between the two teammates. Koroshavin potentially thinking he has some stronger pace than his 141 teammate just ahead on the last lap, only by a tenth. There wasn't a big margin over Pitchick, so maybe a little bit too early in the race for team orders. Not sure whether or not these guys are in a Discord server together. They may be talking to one another, but potentially a little bit of a disagreement between these two Team Baus Ukraine cars, as we'll have a bit of a look further up. This battle for P4 continuing to hot up just a little bit, as Mash continuing to come under pressure from Pookie. Bit of dirt kicked up there from Jan Climbs just up ahead. And on the last lap, Yuroshilenko took 0.8 of a second out of Jordan Watson. So Watson, out of all of our front runners, really, really slow on that last lap. So is the Ferrari now coming undone? A car that was usually known for being able to manage its tyres very well during a race and have very consistent pace. In these hot temperatures, maybe is struggling to be able to hold on to the tread in these tyres. We'll have to see how that gap continues, whether or not that was just a little bit of a mistake on that last lap. A lot of pressure on Jordan's shoulders after what has been a very topsy-turvy season so far. Last lap, 36.6, and does actually extend his lead by just a small amount. In the meantime, though, Mash coming under pressure from Pookie, who goes for a very, very late dive towards the inside turn one. Can he get stopped in time? Just about, but Mash is going to go back towards the inside, and he does get the cutback, and the Porsches will resume order as before. Well, that was a send and a half there from Pookie, very much Daniel Ricciardo-esque, to try that switchback very late into the braking zone. He almost managed to get it to work. You see these cars like for like in terms of straight line speed, both Porsches, so in the slipstream is good enough. He sweeps towards the outside, then as a late dive, just times it beautifully, really clips that inside bit of grass, but Mash does manage to get the car back in front. It is tricky in those sorts of overtakes sometimes, where you have to get the car positioned in such a way, and amongst all of that, how has Pookie ended up losing the position to Daniel Pashka? So we'll skip back in the replay again. So was there a moment for the 333 cars? They head towards turn 6, is where we saw Yelenko have his last bit of contact with Frank Spike. How does it happen? Oh! Goes very, very deep on the brakes and just about keeps it within the bounds of the circuit. And Daniel Pashka, very composed, sees himself go up into P5. And those are crucial, crucial points for the championship as he tries to continue regaining towards what was a championship lead for him a couple of rounds ago over Jogurk, who sits in P8, who's coming under increasing pressure from Andre McClear in that 71 BMW just behind. As Jogurk, first of our pitters, almost clips a tyre barrier, but thankfully doesn't quite end up running into the wall. So Jogurk now with a very, very early pit stop, looking to repair that damage, I would presume, and get a fresh set of boots on the car. It'd be interesting to see where he comes out relative to Matthias Weber amongst all of that. In the meantime, Jay Fang absolutely has his mirrors full of these Team Baus Ukraine cars. Pitchik, the lead one of the two, but if anything, he's going under increasing pressure from his teammate Koroshavin, the man that finished P2 last time out at Bathurst, but for the time being unable to do anything about his teammate just ahead. Clearly does not want to make contact with Pitchik. It'd be disastrous for the constructors, but he's getting very, very close as he think about a late move towards turn 8. Not quite. It's a move that we've seen from a few cars. We've seen Daniel Pashka make it work in the early stages of the race, and it is definitely one that you can make work if you've got more confidence through that series of corners. For the cars that are behaving better in the corners and maybe don't have the sort of straight line speed to open up those opportunities towards turn 1, that is a very good opportunity potentially for those cars to pass. Pitching now, going a little bit deep into the chicane, and potentially now giving his teammate an opportunity to make a move on the next sequence of corners. It was a good run from Koroshavin. He might be a little bit too far back though, because these cars are like for like. Perhaps if it was a Porsche. Pitchik, goes straight towards the pit, so that will answer that one. There'll be no more battling between the two teammates. In the meantime, how are things panning out at the front? Very disappointing last lap from Yuroshilenko as Jan climbs, gets it all wrong on the exit of turn 2, and he just about brings it back for a very late apex at turn 3. And you see just how tricky it is around here to keep it all together. Pashka has immediately got the likes of Pookie back on his gearbox again, so although he got that P5 position, has been unable to run away with it. And although the Porsches do seem to be struggling to some extent, not noticeably in comparison to some of the other cars. So it looks like a little bit more even on that side of things this evening. As who else have we got coming into the pits? Trafka has pitted as well. So where is Trafka going to come out? If I can find him on my... So coming out just now. And where is the likes of Matthias Weber? Matthias Weber still further down the order, is battling at the moment with some other cars. There's Remy Papin up ahead as well. Weber thinks about the inside. Thomas Jack does leave the door open a little bit. He's got to be careful because Weber, you only have to let him know that there's going to be a gap there once, and with the sort of pace that we know he has in that car, he will absolutely go for it first time round if he senses the opportunity for it, but in the end we'll have to concede for the meantime. Also, fastest lap of the race goes to our one Bentley on the field this evening, Benji McCluskey, who isn't the lead of our pitters, but we know what the Bentley can do in these conditions, and we could see him have a very strong end phase to the race. That would be an interesting one to keep an eye on. It's spread out a little bit at the front. Yuroshilenko did take a little bit more out of our race leader, Jordan Watson. The gap almost down to under a second now. And then Jan climbs with that mistake, dropping a bit further back. Mash sitting in a fairly lonesome P4. He hasn't got Daniel Pashka too far behind, who has managed to gap Pookie just a bit. And then we've got Koroshavin now up into P7 as more of our drivers have come into the pits. We've got the likes of Andre McClear, Jay Fang, Robin Moe and Matt York that have all started to do their pit stops. Still very early on in this race, and we know how much the likes of Trevor Wenham struggled in the end stages of the race. But in the meantime, the battle for the effective lead of this race, it may not be the true lead battle, but certainly for track position It is starting to very much hot up now as Jordan Watson has gone absolute faithful of the Honda just behind. And how does he decide to play this? Because he knows that realistically he may not be fighting Euros for this race, because post-race penalties, I am fairly confident, will be applied. So does he think about going towards the pits? Not quite, because what he has to be careful of is losing too much time in battles as more drivers coming into pits now in the background. As we've got Mash and Daniel Pashka coming into the pits. I think Pashka had a very good entry to the pit lane there. Obviously been practicing that one because it looks like he closed up fairly nicely to Mash just up ahead of him. But I think Pashka might have a little bit of damage he wants to repair on that car, so it may not help him out too much in the end. But Watson does need to be careful here about how much he fights, but he is struggling very, very heavily for pace. A 38.1 on that last lap. One of the only drivers to be all the way down in the 38s. We've got drivers like Jogurk in front of our pitters doing a 36 on the last lap, and he's going even faster than that now. We've got others likes of Remy Papin, Benji McCluskey in the mid-35s, so it could be fastest lap of the race potentially for Jogurk. It may not quite be enough. It's a 35.8, so it's certainly close to the pace in the background. Actually, we've got Trafka and McClear going side by side towards turn 1. Trafka trying to go all the way around the outside if he can make it stick. The Honda unable, though, to find grip on the outside turn 1. Very tricky maneuver to make. Really do have to be firmly alongside the other car if you are going to make that one stick. Do need to be down the inside line ideally to make that one work. Watson has managed to regain a little bit of ground over the Honda and give himself a tiny bit of breathing room, and now Joris comes into the pits. Jan Climb's going to follow him in as well. Pookie deciding to stay out a bit longer. Watson, a much better lap on that last one, so he must have made a mistake somewhere in the previous lap. It was a 37.0 for Watson, but surely now he has to be concerned about the undercut strategy potentially from Joris Yelenko. And we'll have to keep an eye on this man as well, Jogurk, who has just come out behind Mash. So in actual fact, Mash is probably the one more to keep an eye on. He was very, very close to the tail end of that pack. I tell you what, though, Daniel Pashka has dropped back quite a chunk, though. It was all contact, I think, between Trafka and McClear. McClear going to recover just in front of the Honda, who ends up having to brake and flashes the lights. I'm not sure if that's an apology or exactly what. So they were fairly close. These guys have been battling for a while. Heading down towards the Audi S's. We caught it in the background shots. Trafka very far away from the BMW ahead. Does he just miss his braking point? And he does! And he just tags the back of the BMW, who goes straight across the gravel, understandably, and Trafka then slossing in behind. So I imagine that might have been Trafka actually deliberately flashing lights there as an apology and conceding the position. So not too much damage done in the end, but clearly not too ideal. Also got a current battle going on for what on track is P3. Realistically, I think it might be outside the top 20 between Benjamin King and, if we'll take Neuwirth. In the meantime, Jan Climbs emerges from the pits, barely ahead of Mash, and then Jogurk lurking in the background. Jan Climbs, you can see, maybe struggling a little bit as those tyres first come up to pressure and temperature. In these track conditions, you wouldn't expect it to take too long, but it can just make you a little bit less confident about what sort of pace you can extract from the car. And Mash right now definitely looking like he is feeling racy. Doesn't even think about a move down towards the S's. He's showing his nose. Don't think he'll be able to go for anything just yet. Jan Climbs goes a little bit deep under braking, gets a kick of oversteer. That's not going to allow Mash through, but certainly allows him to close up. Can he do anything as they come through the final couple of corners? Mash got a little bit held up, more so than he would have liked. We've also got the likes of Watson and Pookie that are in the pits as well. So where are they going to come out? I think Watson has lost the lead. I think Watson has lost the lead entirely, and he has. And he's lost it to Jan Climbs, Mash, Jogurk. Where's Daniel Pashka? Oh, Pashka makes contact with Pookie on the exit of the pit lane. And Jordan Watson, it's all gone wrong for him again. So how on earth has that happened for Jordan Watson? I'm also noticing, where on earth is Joris Yelenko amongst all of this? I think Yelenko, so Uris is all the way down in P15. So I wonder, was there contact between our main race win protagonists, at least in terms of track position? Because Watson lost a huge amount of time. Yelenko is very far down the order. He might have had a bit of damage to repair in the pit lane, but I'm not sure that completely explains that deficit. And out of nowhere now, we've got Jan Climbs and Mash now battling it for the win. So it changes again. But Pashka trying to fight with these cars, and now after getting 2 or 3 cars between himself and his championship rival, it's now complete role reversal because he's got the likes of Pookie and Watson just in front of him, and Jogurk able to run a little bit of clean air just ahead. So not good for the 77 car, for him trying to get his championship challenge back on track. We know that the Audi can overtake around here though, so whether or not he gets a run onto the Porsche in just a moment, we'll have to wait and see. Pookie though did get a good exit there in that final series of corners, so I'm not sure he'll be able to do anything this time round. But Jan Climbs then, for the first time this season, ends up leading the race with Mash closely following him behind. We do have the likes of Neuwirth and Cali that come into the pit, so I think it is now effectively the race. Oh, big kick of focus here for Mash, and he is really pushing in that Porsche. We'll have to see though how it all plays out again in terms of tyre degradation for these drivers. Jogurk now, well, he must be counting his lucky stars. How has he managed to recover that disastrous lap 1 all the way up to P3, where he can see the race win just ahead of him? So great recovery so far from him. In the meantime, Daniel Pashka has done the fastest lap of the race, so he's definitely trying to make up some ground, and you would expect him to be faster than the likes of Pookie at least. Oh, number 8 car, I see a yellow flag in the background. Who is that for? That is Rosetta, who has just done a 180. So what was going on? So we had Rosetta, I think it was Dunnison, and that was a McLaren just ahead. Not sure who that is. So what happened amongst all that? So we had the McLaren going side by side with Dunnison. Dunnison going a little bit wide through turn 2. McLaren sweeps around the outside. And how does Rosetta get collecting all of this? Oh, it gets very, very busy. And Dunnison, as he tries to save the car, ends up tagging the number 88 and sends the BMW round into the wall. What an unfortunate series of events there. And Rosetta, an innocent bystander in all of that. But unfortunately, that does sometimes happen when you've got these close margins between these drivers. Mash and Climbs have managed to really pull a gap now. 0.8 of a second clear of Jogurk on that last lap, so Jogurk's tyres maybe already starting to feel it just a bit. In the meantime, this battle is really hotting up for P4. We've got Pookie, Watson, Daniel Pashka and McClear. Brilliant drive so far from the number 71 BMW. The BMW's really struggling around here for pace, but Andre is doing a fantastic job to get that car up to this end of the grid. We'll also have to keep an eye on the likes of Yelenko, see his progress potentially through the field. It's going to be another difficult day though for him to recuperate good results, because he's dropped down the order, and we're expecting at least a couple of penalties for him post-race, so it's going to be difficult for him to get a good finishing position out of this one. Also got Remy Papin coming under pressure now from Thomas Jack at the tail end of the middle sector. But the McLaren driver unable to do anything in the meantime. It looks like Papin holding on to that one quite nicely, so we will have a look further ahead. As has Watson swap positions with Pookie, I think. I'm not sure if I'm trying to remember the order they were last time round. What were the lap times for these guys? We had 35.8 for Pookie, so no, that is the order they crossed the line last time round. There's very even times between each of these drivers, but still very, very close for this battle for P4. And Pashka now starting to drop a little bit away from the guys that have pitted a bit later on. Watson now maybe able to make use of those fresh tyres and try to recuperate some of the damage done to his race amongst seemingly what happens when we think that there was an incident between him and Euros. In the meantime, or Frank Spike has, I've just noticed, disconnected from the server, so that was a very difficult day and end for him. Clearly not the way that he would have been wanting his day to go. Man that started very well in this race, was running in second place, and then ended up with that contact with this man, number 17 car, who has just done fastest lap of the race as he looks to try to get past Dominic Koroshavin, who, after putting all sorts of pressure onto his teammate Pitchik earlier on, hasn't been able to convert that pace that we saw into an overtake. Juros now looking to try to go around the outside into the Audi S's. That would be very, very brave. The Audi has the grunt, though, on the run down that short straight to stop that move from potentially being put on him. But potentially, with the pace that Juros has in this Honda, you would have to imagine he might be in a strong position to make a move towards turn 1. There's a good exit for Koroshavin. Let's see how much of an overspeed does Yelenko get in the slipstream. The Audi even running a little bit wide. That tends to be a sign that they're struggling on the tyres. But that Audi, so quick in a straight line. Juros absolutely dead in the water there to the straight line speed in the Audi, really closing up in the corners. But Koroshavin with a very, very quick car down that back stretch. Mr. Jones and Jay Fang also battling with one another right now. Number 9 car and the number 14. Good job there from Mr. Jones to get the Aston Martin into a fairly decent position. Just checking in on this battle with Koroshavin, still holding off the number 17 Honda. The pair of them closing up a bit to Gaspar Rack, who has made his way up into the top 10, but unable to make any further progress in the meantime. Just looking, we might have a bit of a battle hotting up in our front few positions. We've got Mash that is continuing to be all over the gearbox of our race leader, Jan Climbs. Jogurk is coming under increasing pressure from Pookie, so the Porsche is running particularly well today in the hands of some of these Tier 2 drivers, so good effort there from them. Watson now has got Pashka that's closed up a bit to him, and Trafka has reeled in Andre McClear, who is coming under some additional pressure as well. So a bit of a dynamic in some of these lap times between these guys, as in the meantime Jogurk has got the Porsche all over his gearbox. Flashing the lights there is Pookie just behind, but you can see even that close in the slipstream, the Porsche driver unable to reel in that SpongeBob liveried Audi. In the meantime, number 17 car, that's Juros Yelenko that's just come into the pits. So what has happened there with one of our previous drivers that was battling for the win? Obviously has had a few incidents today, seemingly is retired to the pits. So it's all well and good through turn 12. Turn 13, oh, gets a pig moment and straight into the wall. A huge impact there for the number 17 car, and masses of damage. Just takes a little bit of curb on that inside of 13 and gets absolutely launched into the wall. Thankfully doesn't collect anyone else out in the meantime, but that is his race over and done with, so any post-race penalties will probably be fairly redundant after all that. In the end, as Pookie sends up towards the inside, Jogurk's got a championship to think about, so he has to leave some room. Pookie now on the inside, Watson trying to get involved in this as well as they go towards the Audi S's. Can the grunt of the Audi save Jogurk now, so he will have the inside line? How late is Pookie on the brakes? The answer's very, and he just about squeezes around the outside, and now Jogurk might lose a position to Watson, who squeezes him off, and he goes off! The championship leader now off into the wall. He's going to have Andre trying to get past as well. The BMW is going to sweep around the outside, and Jogurk, it all goes wrong, and what was P3 in this race ends up now going down towards what I think will be P7. And Pashka, well, he'll be rubbing his hands together after that one, because that's allowed him to recuperate some of the damage that was being done to his charge in the championship. He was putting some pressure onto the likes of Watson and Pookie ahead, but Jogurk, his day just goes from bad to worse. He's really had an up and down race so far in this opening 35 minutes. Obviously a very troublesome start, did well to recover, but now is continuously a drop off, and that's going to be extra damage. The tyre wear really starting to kick in now, and he'll be lucky potentially to even hold on to a top 10 finish at the end of this race. So it's going to be a long 25 minutes in that car. But yeah, Pookie really sent it very, very late there. Did do very well to hold it around the outside in the Audi S's, but it did get very, very busy very, very quickly. But extremely confident on the brakes in that Porsche. Sweep around the outside of the Audi S's. That's a very, very rare move that we see a move being done. So great stuff there from him. As now Jordan Watson is the next car trying to put the Porsche driver under pressure. But in the meantime, Christos Jogurk really coming under pressure from the Honda of Trafka now as his day continues to spiral. How much grunt has the Honda got in a straight line against the Audi? Getting a nice view of the rear wing there, the effort that's gone into this livery. But Jogurk would have been really wanting to see himself further up the order than where he is at the moment. And for now, does manage to hold on to that position. Very difficult circuit to make overtakes at, generally speaking, so the straight line speed will help him. But in these next 20 minutes, those tyres are going to start to feel worse and worse. So by no means is it over and done with just yet for the driver sitting currently in P7. Mash has dropped a little bit away from Jan Climbs. He was a couple of attempts faster on the last lap. And it was the likes of Pookie, Watson and Pashka that were fastest of our top 5. So that trio of cars starting to try to push on. There's 20 minutes left on the clock. There's still a bit of a decent margin towards those top 2. So they're really going to have to work together here. And there's all big slide there for Watson just up ahead of the Audi. Maybe that Ferrari already starting to come under some strain with the tyre, where we saw that Watson had good pace in the opening few laps, but really did suffer later on in the stint, and which partly and quite possibly led to that additional contact that we believe to have happened between himself and Yelenko. And that could see him come under a lot of additional pressure from the number 77 car very, very soon. As Jogurk now continuing to fend off the Honda just behind. Jay Fang also under pressure from Mr. Jones. What's the straight line speed difference between these cars? We'll go on board with the Aston Martin. The Aston clearly does have a little bit of straight line speed advantage when it's in the toe. He's not going to be able to get to the inside line though before turn 1. They're going to be side by side. Very, very late on the brakes there from the number 9 car. But again, he'll be sent towards the outside and unable to make the move there. So we'll have to continue to settle for P14. Good defending there from the McLaren driver. As in the meantime, we've got Thomas Jack sandwiched between Benji McCluskey and Remy Papin. This trio battling for P15. And once again proving no matter whereabouts you are on the grid that there is a battle to be had, which is always fantastic for us to view with racing, and also add some enjoyment when you are racing as well, because even if you've had a bit of a tough day in the office, you are often still in a very, very intense scrap for whatever positions in the field. In the meantime, though, somebody who's continuing to have a difficult day, Matthias Weber, who was all sorts of smashed up on that first lap in that opening series of contact, and despite that, Benjamin King goes very, very wide on the exit there of turn 8 and goes straight into the wall on the exit. That was a very, very unusual incident there. Just completely ran it out wide and then went straight on. It doesn't look like it was a hardware failure, because, I say that though. Oh, no, it's okay. I thought we were having server issues again. It's no, just ACC doing wonders with the cameras as per usual. But big contact there for the number 99 Audi, so not what he would have been hoping for. Mash, though, continuing to reel in Jan Climbs, taking another 10th of a second out of the 329 car, and trying to see if he can look to get a potential win. The likes of Pookie and Watson was still faster behind. Daniel Pashka was a little bit slower last time round. In the meantime, we've got Pitchik and Gasper Marak, who have closed up onto the back of... So we've got Trafka ahead as the lead Honda, and then Pitchik and Marak that have come up behind, who are really starting to try to put on a strong bit of overtaking here if they can. Got an apology there from Yuroshilenko, and yeah, these things happen. It is unfortunate it happens to the best of us. In the heat of the moment, decisions are made. We saw decisions made yesterday by other drivers in Tier 1, our top elite set of drivers, and unfortunately these things do happen, but the best thing that you can do in those situations is exactly that, to take responsibility and apologise. So yours all will be forgiven. It is, after all, despite being a competitive environment, a friendly community of racing drivers, and we learn and move on. So well done there, and big appreciation, I'm sure, not just from myself and those watching the stream, but other drivers, when they'll watch this back, will appreciate the notion of that, undoubtedly. In the meantime, Yoga continuing to come under lots of pressure now, as this is starting to get into a bit of a five-way fight for P7, as Yoga comes under more and more pressure from the Honda of Trafka, swiftly followed up by Pitchik, Gasper Marak, and Dominic Koroshavin, who have been in a very, very intense squabble now for the last few laps, as Yogurk really struggling with the torque against that Honda. The Honda just has so much pace up the hill, doesn't have the outright top speed of the Audi down the start-finish straight, but in the sections where torque is really a big factor, that is where the Honda seems particularly strong. So Trafka using that to the advantages that he can to close up, as Yogurk goes a little bit wide again. Gonna have to look to defend that inside line. You can see Trafka really sniffing around there for an overtaking opportunity. As Ola Pitchik now looks towards kind of the outside, Trafka looking towards the inside. No one going to be able to make a move into the Audi S's, but it is getting very, very busy amongst each of these cars, and you'd have to imagine that at some point very, very soon that one of them is going to make a mistake or see an opportunity through. Trafka continuing to close up onto the gearbox of the Audi. We'll see. This is the closest he's been in a long time, and I think Yogo maybe having to have a slight lift through that final corner. You see, not quite as confident with the mid-corner speed, but just the grunt of the Audi, the Honda, just can't do anything about it, but he will switch towards the outside. How late does he think about going on the brakes? In the end, have to concede to backing off there. Pitchik got a little bit bunched up with the Honda as well, but they all stay in the same order that they entered turn one in, but very, very close racing between these guys. We've also got a little bit of a battle going on between Robin Moe and Yuko Terminen in the Lexus bit further down. So good stuff there from them. That's closed up a bit. As well as we've also got this trio still battling fairly hard between Papin, Jack and McCluskey, who are in a fight for P15. But it does seem like right now the most intense fight we have is this squad of 5 cars. Also just noting, Mash on this lap, I think they've made a bit of a mistake. He's dropped back away again from Yang Climb, so he gets close and then just has a slight error and then ends up falling a bit further back, maybe struggling to follow so close around the tricky, twisty changes of direction of this circuit. Very difficult to spot the precise lines that you need to be fast around here with, as he now drops well outside of a second. In the meantime though, Trafka, the very, very close before turn 12. Does he think about a move into turn 12? Not quite, almost clipping the back of the Audi, and it's going to be very, very similar to how they were before. I think he's even a little bit further back potentially than he was on the previous lap. We'll hop on the rear wing of the Audi. You can see just doesn't move, just doesn't gain, doesn't drop back in the slipstream. The Audi still has so much straight line speed. He's able to hold all of these cars back that arguably are significantly faster. Yogurk doing his absolute best to be the bottleneck in this group, because his championship hopes ride on him being able to score as many points as he possibly can, of course, as his championship rival is already 2 positions up ahead of him. So if he loses one, the way that these battles tend to go, it can very easily turn into a series of points, series of position losses. Does Trafka think about a move towards the inside? We've seen it go wrong in this corner before, but he backs out of it. Yogurk Took a very wide line there, maybe conscious of whether or not the Honda was going to commit towards the inside there. Pitch it coming under pressure now from Gaspenrack as well. Will we see any dives from any of these cars going in towards turn 8? Gaspenrack, we've got Koroshavin trying to go all the way around the outside. It'd be a brilliant move if he can do that. He's trying to keep a nose in there, but Gasper does not let him have it, and he will have to try to find another way around. This whole battling has allowed Alessio Mellis in the Ferrari to close up amongst these drivers as well, to make it a 6-way tussle for P7, as you see the Audi really continuing to struggle with any series of corners. Slow speed, high speed, really very much struggling. It's got just over 12 minutes left on the clock for the remainder of this race to see if he can hold this position. He'll be very, very pleased about the straight line speed performance of his car, allowing him to hold on to this position. It really would require a very, very late braking maneuver. Oh! From Trafka, who sends that championship leader around! And Jogurk, after holding on to that position for so long, will rejoin just ahead of Fang. I think Fang is going to get past as well. Going to be side by side towards the right-hand kink of 2. Jogurk now with a big kick of oversteer. He's trying to hold on to everything that he can possibly get. Fang still on the outside. And in the end, I think he will have to concede that one. I think unfortunately it's been a bit too long on the replay now to confidently get that one back. But Jogurk did nothing wrong there. I think Trafka just completely misjudged his mid-corner pace and ended up running straight into the back of our championship leader and, well, soon to be ex-championship leader, because with that now I can be fairly confident in saying that Daniel Pashka, who currently sits in P5, has not been the easiest of races for him so far today, but right now it would be enough for him to regain the championship lead, which he will be very, very pleased about after that disaster at Bathurst. But still needs to bring it home in that 77 car if he wishes to capitalise on that series of things. Jay Fang has managed to get the move done on Jogurk. So whereabouts did that happen? Jogurk got a little bit wide through 7. They were still battling into 8, and I think it might have been a late dive up the inside from the 14 car. Really fought to get a car there, and he forces his way through rather brutally. Mr. Jones has to slam on the brakes mid-corner, and poor Jogurk is just getting absolutely bullied left, right, and centre right now in the series of corners, and his championship hopes continuing to spiral. See, Mr. Jones thought about going up the inside into the Audi S's, but unable to do anything just yet. But Jogurk's day goes from bad to worse. Meantime, P7 now taken over by Trafka with a little bit of a gap that he's managed to stretch ahead of Pitchik, followed by Mrak and Koroshavin. So these 4 cars still battling. Mellis did close up a little bit, but now these guys have got a bit more free space. He's dropped a bit further off this pack. We have that trio battling between Remy Papin and Benji McCluskey and Thomas Jack. They've closed up onto a few cars, so that is Mr. Jones, Jogurk, and Jay Fang just up ahead of them. Jay Fang, you would have to imagine, with the sort of pace we've seen from him in this part of the race, would look to extend away, but Jogurk now continue to come under pressure, and his bikini bottom compatriot Remy Papin in that number 6 car, sporting the Patrick livery theme, has got the McLaren very, very close up behind him. Again, the Audi straight line speed will be helping him out greatly in terms of holding on to these positions, but does look like the McLaren is looking quite strong in this latter stage of the race. Jogurk now, what can he do against the likes of the Aston Martin of Mr. Jones? We saw the Aston does have some good straight line speed. Would it be relative to the Audi, using a bit of a track and more, trying to get a nose up the inside. Jogurk squeezing him towards the inside walls like Barrichello and Schumacher are hungry, and somehow, someway, the number 9 car squeezes out the inside and he launches it into turn 1. Can he hold on the exit? No, I think he's going to run wide. Jogurk though fighting back on the cutback, and I think he might have done enough to try to recover the position. Contact in the middle of turn 2. Papin now trying to capitalise on this, go around the outside of the Aston, and he will. Thomas Jack now trying to capitalise on this as well, see if he can get past the Audi. Aston Martin, though, fighting back on Remy Papin. Remy Papin, though, gained that position for a second. Now he's got Thomas Jack to worry about as they run side by side towards turn 6. Remy Papin trying to hold around the outside, now turn into the inside. He's going to have the grunt in that car as Thomas Jack thinks about going towards the inside turn 6 in the end. After all of that, after what looked like a brilliant move from Mr. Jones, somehow ends up with him losing a position to one of the other Audis. So, action continuing. Thomas Jack got a good run there. Mr. Jones knows it, covers the inside, and will have to settle for dropping back there. Remy now sits behind his teammate. How do these two play this? Does Jorgok decide to let his teammate go, who arguably maybe has some stronger pace right now, or does he act as an additional buffer to try to help Jorgok retain as many points in the championship as possible? We'll have to wait and see how this pans out between these two. Also just checking up a bit further ahead, we've got Pitchik and Gasper Marak close to one another. Traffic has been able to continue to extend that margin by just a small amount. Pitchik, you see, using the slipstream of the Honda up ahead. And we know that the Audi is just absolutely immense down this start-finish straight. It's so difficult to put a move on that car. In the meantime, getting very, very busy. Whoa! Oh, it's contact between Mr. Jones, Jorgok, Remy Papin, all getting very bunched up in this. We wanted to be battling. There's definitely more so than that. Almost 3 wide going towards turn 2 now. Thomas Jack trying to make a move up here as well. And Mr. Jones and Papin will both get past. Jorgok dropping positions absolutely every single lap at the moment. Don't know if we'll be able to catch what happened there. So on the run towards turn 1, it was Remy Papin who managed to get down the inside. Mr. Jones wanted to capitalise on this. There was a slight tag between those two. Mr. Jones went deep on the brakes. Jorgok then once again got sent towards the outside. And in the end just had to concede to anyone that went past him. The tyres on that car must be absolutely shredded. The damage that's been progressively done over these laps is just continuing to make it an absolute misery to drive that Audi. And our championship leader ends up continuing what has been an absolutely horrid day in that car. Must be very, very frustrating as now Thomas Jack's got a very, very good run towards the inside of the Audi S's. It's difficult to make a move here. Jorgok does manage to outbrake him towards that apex, so he won't be able to make a move just yet. And the number 13 car will have to continue to settle just behind the Audi. In the meantime, though, Mash has massively dropped off the back of Jan Climbs. Jan Climbs, after coming under a lot of pressure earlier on in the race, has a 2-second lead, and Mash now, with a few laps to go, has the likes of Pookie that is lapping very, very quickly relative to him. And Watson's not far back in the background, our previous race leader sitting in P4. And Pookie now thinking about an inside move towards turn 6. Mash goes to cover it off. I don't think Pookie was really making a serious attempt there, but he's just trying to put Mash offline, make him think twice about his lines, and then see if he can use the slipstream. This is like-for-like cars, and the slipstream with the Porsche does seem to be pretty effective between these two cars when they do fight on track. So if he can compromise Mash's lines enough and set up a good exit through 12 and 13, he could very well look to trying to make a move down in towards turn 1. What sort of pace does a 333 car have in this final sector? Does get nicely tucked into the first apex. Same with the second. We'll go on board with Pookie, see what he can do from inside the cockpit as he fare through 12. Much earlier on the power. You could visibly see how much he gained in the mid-corner portion there. Losing a bit of ground dirty here, but Mash really struggling with the understeer. And I think there may well be a fight towards turn 1. Mash going very, very early towards the inside line. He's going to have to send his fan towards the outside. We've seen him try to go around the outside. What a contact on the inside! And Mash is around. Pookie just about holds on to it. And I think Watson collected Mash. And now Pookie is up into P2. Watson P3. Mash all the way down into P5. Daniel Pashka scavenges another position there. And Pookie, well, see if we can catch a replay of what happened there. We'll go on board. We'll go on board with Mash. What was it like from his point of view? Because we'll see the blue Porsche come flying around the outside in the braking zone. There's Pookie. Oh, and just very, very early contact, well before the apex of the corner. And then gets sent around by Watson. Watson will have collected some damage there as well, which is very, very unfortunate for him. Not sure in this late stage of the race whether or not it will end up compromising him too much, but Mash, that's a difficult one to call. We would really need more angles. It looks like Pookie just cut across the nose of the number 3 car a bit severely. They were still quite far from the apex, and Mash definitely still had a nose up the inside, and they weren't even really near the main apex of the corner, so I don't even think you can argue that Mash hadn't turned in properly for that one. So I'm sure that there'll be a steward's inquiry for that, which could potentially see Pashka even gain all the way up to a podium. Could you believe it? After the day that he had at Bathurst, and after the way that this race started for him, he's been ahead of his championship rival, he's been behind his championship rival, and now he's got the possibility of getting a podium in the final stage of this race, whilst Jogurk is all the way down in P17. And the thing has lost additional positions there to Benji McCluskey. So we were looking at the battle up at the front, so we didn't see what happened exactly to the Audi, but continuing to lose out more and more severely. McCluskey now trying to think about going for a move on Thomas Jack just up ahead. The Bentley has good speed on the McLaren. Oh, a little bit moving of lines there in the braking zone. Couldn't quite place there where Thomas was trying to go. In the meantime, though, Jogurk under increasing pressure from Robin Moe, trying to sneak up towards the inside of turn 2. Won't be able to do anything just yet, though. And Jogurk will survive for another day. But 2 more laps left of this race to go. See what we have going on at the front. Oh, Pookie looking very, very unsettled as he went through in towards turn 9. Watson may be able to gain a position out of this in terms of post-race penalties. We won't know exactly how that all pans out at the end of today, so these results will be very, very provisional. But Pookie may well end up getting a penalty for that contact with Mash a couple of laps ago. So Watson may not be looking to fight this one too hard, and well, he was all a bit wide there for Watson, so I think that might be his challenge for P2, potentially done there, at least in terms of being done on track. Andre McClear has come under a bit of pressure from Trafka in the latter stages of the race. Lost some time on the last few laps to the Honda just behind. McClear's done a very good job in that BMW to be all the way up into P6. It is not a strong circuit for this car, so he's done very, very well to avoid all the chaos and capitalise on the other areas. Can he hold on to that position in the meantime? I'll have to wait and see. We've also got Jogurk now continuing to come under pressure from the McLaren of Robin Moe. Can the Vodafone liveried car do anything going towards turn 1? He's going to be forced towards the outside again. Terminen trying to get involved in this. It'll be side by side towards turn 1. A little bit of bumping. Terminen going down the inside now of Robin Moe. Got to be very, very careful between one another. They give each other just enough room. Jogurk now has the inside line for turn 2. Can he hold it? Robin Moe brilliantly holds it around the outside. Fantastic racing between these guys. Terminen just trying to find which way is the right way to go. And Robin Moe, I think, will get that move done onto Jogurk, but it's going to be a drag race. No, Jogurk keeping his foot in it, and now as they go on the run up the hill, the Audi Grunt once again, it looks like it might save him because they're going towards turn 6 out the inside, and I think he will manage to recover the position just about, and Terminen unable to capitalise on anything from Robin Moe either, so Jogurk fighting for his life even down in P17. A brilliant racing between those two drivers, giving each other barely enough room as Terminen thinks about a late move towards Robin Moe. Unable to make it stick though. But we are going to cut towards the front because it's all about this man. Yang Climbs, well, he capitalised on other people's errors, but he drove a champion's drive there today. And the number 329 takes the win here at Zandvoort. Pookie will finish provisional P2. Watson, provisional P3. We'll see how penalties play out. Pashka recovers to P4. Maybe a podium out of that for him. Andre McClear will maintain his P6 ahead of Trafka. Mash we'll have to settle for P5 in the end with that late contact. We're going to jump back down the order though, because we've got some battles towards the line. Got a little bit of a drag race going on between Jack and Mr. Jones. I think the Aston is going to just about hold on to it though for P14. And then whereabouts is this battle with Jogurk and Robin Moe? It's even closer, but I think as they head towards the line, Jogurk will just about hold on to it. It won't mean a lot to him after the disaster of a day that he has had, but every point can potentially count. Also another drag race between Jean-Michel Brin and James Cowley there. As then Loris Madiri, I think, our penultimate driver to cross the line, and then Dutnison, who had that contact with Rosetta earlier on in the race, coming now through 12 and into 13 to close up the order. But my goodness, what a busy race from start to finish. Oh, Dutnison getting a little bit wide, maybe pushing those tyres a little bit harder than the life that they've got left. But it will be Dutnison to then cross the line and close out that one. But what a brilliant and action-packed race as always there. Jan Climbs taking, in the end, a win with a decent margin out the front. Very, very well-deserved drive from him. Pookie will get out provisional P2. We'll have to see whether or not there are any penalties applied for that incident with Mash. Jordan Watson, he was leading the race in the first half, and then something happened. We're not quite sure. He did drop down the order, but does recover to P3, maybe even P2. And Daniel Pashka works wonders for his championship with a P4 position. He'll have been hoping for more, given how he qualified. But in terms of the championship, certainly the sort of day that he needed to have, and the sort of day he needed his rival to have. Mash, very unfortunate there at the end to drop from P2 down to P5. Does some rather illegal donuts in the pit lane. Obviously metaphorically illegal, we don't have any regulations on that post-race. Andre McClear, good drive from him in the BMW for P6. Trafka, P7, was not far behind. Ola Pitchik, P7 with his teammate Koroshavin, closing out the top 10. Leaderboard a bit shuffled there. We had Gasper Mrak that finished in P8. We had Alessio Mellis, P11, Jay Fang in P12, Remy Papin P13, holding off Mr. Jones, and then Thomas Jack and Benji McCluskey with that hard-fought battle all the way to the end. Yuko Termanen finished just behind Robin Moe and Chris's Yogurk. Apologies, the leaderboards are a little bit wonky for me at this end, so some people leaving the sessions, which makes it a bit difficult to track. Matt York finishing in P20. Matthias Weber, who almost looked like he had the dream start at the beginning to sweep around the outside of Yuroshilenko, ends up all the way down in 21st position, so not how he wanted his day to go. Benjamin King and Voltak Neuwirth in 23rd place. Jean-Michel Brin in 24th. James Calley 25th. Loris Madiri in 26th, Dudlison 27th, and then Rosetta did finish the race, was a lap down, did charge on at the end though, despite a difficult day. And then our retirements for the day, we had Yuroshilenko, Hans Peter, Frank Spike, and Andre Verona. Didn't see what happened to Hans and Andre there, but Yuroshilenko, multiple incidents there for him. Won't have any effect on the race result as far as his day goes now, but may well end up getting some penalty points for how those played out. Have to wait and see. And then our other retirement, Frank Spike, a really, really rough day for him as well. Was driving so well at the beginning, was very much at the pointy end of the grid, and then ended up dropping all the way down to the back of the pack after DNFing. So, very tough day for the Porsche driver. Not sure whether or not we'll have any interviews. We'll see if we get any before we wrap up this evening. I'm not sure whether or not we will have anybody join us in the commentary box for an interview. We'll see if anyone drops by. Motions, though, do tend to run a little bit high, understandably, after a race like that, particularly if it hasn't gone your way exactly on the day, and there were a lot of drivers that ended up suffering, rather unfortunately, with various incidents during that one. But one absolute masterclass from Jan Climbs there today. He did everything that he needed to do. He was under pressure from Mash for a long period in that second stint, but he was just very mature. He maintained his lines. He didn't miss a breaking point, and in the end was able to cross the line in a very well-deserved P1 spot. So fantastic stuff there from him this evening. Stake his first win of the season. Daniel Pashka, I'm fairly confident, will end up being our championship leader. It's difficult to say exactly where others are going to place because, well, Yogurk scoring very few points from today. Melis got a decent amount of points, so he may also jump up a little bit. Steinhauser, I don't think, raced this evening at all. Koroshavin, decent bank of points for him, so he may breach into that sort of top 3. Madiri had a tough day. Matt York didn't have a great one. Weber struggled. Papin had a tough day in the office. And Gasper Marak returning for the first time since round 1 as our season opener winner did not have the strongest of pace. Didn't manage to make up after that poor qualifying from him to end up with a top 10 position. Did get P8, which will help him out, but probably would have been hoping for a bit more on his return. It doesn't look like we are going to have any interviews from people, so that may be it then for this evening. But what a fantastic bit of action we have had at Zandvoort once again. As always, whenever we have Tier 2 action, it is just as action-packed as Tier 1 and Zandvoort, despite not being the easiest of circuits to overtake at. Always giving us the sort of joyous content that we enjoy watching week in, week out. We will be back again next week for Suzuka, where we'll be heading to round 5 of the season. So it'll be interesting to see how these cars get on around here and how the drivers tackle New Challenge Suzuka, a very, very demanding circuit with a whole different series of challenges for these guys to try to take on. It will be Tier 1 on Monday, once again at 7:30 British Standard Time, and then Tier 2 a week from now on Tuesday at 7:30 British Standard Time as well. So do join us again then. And as always, if you wish to get involved in some of this racing yourself and get involved with the community, do considering heading over to the website apexonline.racing to sign up to any of the leagues that we are running here at AOR at the moment. There are GT3 leagues, obviously, for ACC, but there are also other events that go on. There's endurances, GT4's multi-class series. We had the BMW Cup wrap up not too long ago, and then there are platforms of several different types as well for you to get involved in if you want to get involved in the sim racing side. If you want to keep up to date on all the streams and the action and the results, do consider following AOR on Twitter at Apex on Racing. And if you want to join the community to get to know more of other passionate sim racers and motorsport enthusiasts for just a friendly environment where you can share all of this passion and hobbies, then do consider looking at joining Discord server as well. It's always fantastic to have as many people joining the community as possible. But that will be it then for today and this week in terms of the GT3 series on ACC. Thank you so much everybody for watching this evening. We'll see you again in a week's time, but for tonight it's goodbye.